Hello and welcome to another episode of the Femininja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I have a fantastic and fascinating guest with me today. This gentleman is going to tell us a lot about investing for our retirement, and he truly is an expert in his field. His name is Steve Selengut. He is the income independence coach. He is also an author who has spent his entire career building retirement income. He spent over 50 years as a private investment portfolio manager, including 44 years managing up to 300 different client portfolios at a time. He is the author of the book titled Retirement Money Secrets to help more investors understand how the market really works and how to take advantage of their constant volatility. Steve, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be with you. Pleasure to be with you.
I mean your journey, your life's journey is really very fascinating. And just so the listeners know, at this point in Steve's life, he is just traveling the world, has the world basically, at his feet and is having a great time. So tell us how you did it and how more of us can do it as well.
Well, it it all started way back. I don't know. I've always been an income focused type guy. Um, when I was a kid, mowing lawns or
Mhm,
teaching um, tourists how to water ski or whatever, I always was thinking of the income and how I could put that to work. And that probably came from my father being a real estate developer, and he had
mm,
rental properties and stuff like that. And he also was focused on the income. He never was in the stock market. He didn't understand that because they didn't pay you for the use of your money. You know what I
mhm,
mean?
mhm,
So he wasn't game for that. He wanted income. He wanted to do mortgages because he'd get the principal and income back. He'd
mhm,
want to do rentals because he'd get that, so that type of thing. So, and he taught me to do with my earnings was to put some away and watch how the income grew. And he taught me about compound earnings on, the bank giving you, I guess at that time it was like 3 or 4%
mhm,
back in the 70s
mhm,
or pre 70s, really for
mhm.
being 12 years old. So I
Well,
grew up
you were
playing.
12 years old at the time?
No, no,
Oh,
not in the 70s, but when I was doing the school things like
oh,
mowing
okay.
lawns and stuff like
Mhm,
that, and then pre-college.
mhm,
So anyway, I got a business degree. I didn't go for anything more professional or anything like that. By the time when I was around 25, I was given the results of all that stuff I put away as a kid with him and what he didn't have to pay to send me to the Ivy League school that my brother went to, and so on. So I had this amount. At that time, it's a large amount in 1970 when it was thrust upon me, and it was all in the
mhm,
stock market, all different stocks. His attorney had done the investing, not him.
mhm,
And there it was. Here it is, son. Don't lose it, that type of thing.
mhm,
So I studied hard and I didn't do anything stupid. And I noticed that everything paid dividends that I owned, and I continued with that. And I studied charts and things like that. And I saw, how the market went up and down and up and down. And it always did. And the same companies went up and down and up and down. It depending on which industry we're in, some were going up, some were going down. That didn't bother me. It seemed kind of natural.
mhm,
And I started saying, well, why shouldn't I be, selling them when they go up? And then I'll buy them again when they go down, and
mhm,
that. So we did some of that.
mhm,
I had a job in New York. I lived in North Jersey
mhm,
at a lake, and I commuted to New York. And I was in the pension investment department of a life insurance company from from when I got out of college until I quit in '79. And I learned a lot about investing from the job I had. I was traveling all over the country talking to their clients who were um, letting them manage their defined contribution plans. A defined contribution plan is not a pension. It's
Mhm,
kind of like our current 401ks are.
mhm,
Those are defined contribution. They were called savings and investment plans back in those days. And I had a conversation once with a guy. We were on a trip out, and I noticed in their management of our plan, the one I was a participant in, that they had this huge amount of Boeing stock. And it was, literally millions of dollars in profits.
wow.
And I said to him, I said, why do you have all this Boeing stock? Why don't you take your profits, buy something else, buy something that pays a little more income than Boeing does? And, and he said, he taught me a lesson.
Mhm.
And the light bulb went off in my head, and they almost turned the plane around. The light bulb was so bright. He said, Steve, in the real world of investing with big money managers and stuff like that, Boeing is one of the company's biggest clients, and they want us to have a large amount of their stock in our investment programs. So I don't have the liberty to sell it for profit. I have to keep
Mm,
a certain amount of Boeing stock. So that light bulb was, this whole thing is as much politics as it is economics. So don't fall in love with any of these things, because they fire that insurance company and they sell their 3 million shares of Boeing and it's going to tank. So that's when I started trading and always having a target profit. Anything, anything I ever owned from that point on, any stock, if it went up 10%, I was selling it. Period. End of story. Not even thinking about it, you know? So, so, but the idea was that I was developing a second stream of income.
mhm.
Not only was everything I bought paying dividends, but I was taking all these opportunities to make a 10% profit, sometimes even less. So I was adding those two together. And by the time 1979 rolled around, I was making about 5 times my salary
Wow.
trading in the stock market. So,
I just want to ask a really quick question because when you first that light bulb went off and you started, like selling some of your stocks and getting that return, which is significant, I think. Did it give you heartburn at first? Did you have any trepidation, or was it like this is
nah,
the thing to do?
I never looked back, because I knew there were so many companies of the same ilk, the same
Hmm.
degree. They've been around a long time. I mean, in those days, you had Sears. You remember Sears, Roebuck?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
You know,
I remember getting the catalog.
yeah. So, I had things like that, and it was Esso at that time, and then became Exxon. There was Shell and all the different oil companies before
Hmm.
Boone Pickens came along and consolidated several of them. So there were so many to choose from, and they all paid dividends in different industries. I learned about sectors, and stuff like that. One's going up, the other's going down. Oil, oil was always the best industry ever in my youth to invest in, because it was always volatile, and it was, it just always was great. Uh, it's still not bad, but so that's the thing. I got intrigued with generating these high levels of income and growing the portfolio and growing the income, and that's how I got to where I was. And then in '79, when I got to this point where I was quitting, I had already established a corporation.
Hmm.
I to do management. I had investigated how to get a license to do it, which was
Hmm.
difficult. And I had lined up two friends as my first clients to get started with. So that's when it started in '79. And, you know, a mere 40 years later, I sold the thing, so it was a good trip.
Obviously. But I have a question when you say, the volatility and that's really a good thing, and you looked for the companies that had the volatility. To me, that sounds like that's really risky. When I hear that, the volatile market, I just wanna go running, to my bank account and check it and make sure everything's okay.
Okay, well, volatility, stock prices are supply and demand. Who wants it and who's buying it and who's selling it? It's a market, just like a flea market would be or anything else. The more demand, the higher the price can be at, and so on. And those things will vary from for news stories, for weather conditions, for politics.
Mhm.
But the established companies aren't going anywhere. So when you begin to invest, most people get started with a glow in their eyes that they're going to pick the next Nvidia or the next Microsoft or
Mhm.
Google, and they'll buy every IPO that comes out with a nice story. When they don't realize that in the history with IPOs, probably 90% or more of them go bust,
Mm.
while the others make trillions, but still, and you could get lucky. And you can always get in a little later when they've actually established themselves, which is a safer route to travel. But I was never that much of a speculator. And if you look at the history of the oil company stocks or healthcare like Pfizer and those types of companies,
Mhm.
you'll see that their chart their charts are all basically the same. Stuff
Mhm.
like that. And every time, historically, if you had bought them and taken your 10% profits along the way and bought them again later, and
Mhm.
I had a buying target too, or a buying um, level. If it had to be 20% down, I'm getting technical now. It had to be 20% down from its 52-week high. In other
Mhm.
words, where it's been
Mhm.
in the past, if it was down 20%, it was good enough for me to buy. That would make it a buy again. So I'd wait for the oil companies go down and I'd buy them back again. They go up and I'd sell them back. And I did that over and over, for my first profit ever was Shell Oil in 79, or
Wow.
no, in 70. And I probably bought and sold that 100 times for 100 different people over the next 40 or so years. So
Wow.
and same with Pepsi and Coke. And if you just anybody just listens to the names I'm putting out and go back and look at their charts over the years, you'll see an ever rising chart, but with a lot of up and down. And just think about it. If you had bought it every time it went down 10% or down 20% and sold it every time it went up 10% from there, think about how many times,
Uh-huh.
how many multiples of its current price it would be today
Mhm.
that you would have profited. And that's the principle, because you're reinvesting at a lower level and you're adding to your capital and you're reinvesting that capital. And the more you reinvest that capital, the second stream of income being the
Mhm.
profits, the
Mhm.
more you have invested generating more income.
Mhm. So,
And we haven't even started to talk about income investing, which
okay,
is
so before we
bonds
do,
and mortgages and stuff like that.
when
But
you
you
talk about how just so the listeners know, how would they be able to, like, go on the internet and find out and look at some of those charts that you're talking about?
almost any if you go to Yahoo Finance
Ah.
and put in the symbol for you Google it, you'll find its symbol, or you just write it in at
Mhm.
Yahoo and put it in. You put in whatever is symbol. I don't do individual stocks anymore. I do
Mhm.
closed-end funds. So,
Mhm.
but with individual stock, you put it in, and then you'll see a little chart on the bottom, and you can look at it. It's 1 year performance, it's 5 year performance, 10, and forever
Mhm.
performance, and you can get a chart, and you can determine where it's been, what
Mhm.
it's been doing. You can also push other buttons and get its dividend history and stuff like that.
Wow.
So you can really learn a lot about it before you say, I'm going to invest in this thing.
Right.
I never invest in anything that doesn't pay me a
Mm.
dividend or
Mhm.
interest or something like that. That's just one of my rules. And for starters in investing, there are four ways that they can minimize the risk of what they're doing. There's four basic things, and you've read about all of them in the book because I saw you were about halfway through. So you've seen the discussion of quality, diversification, income, and profit taking. Those are the four.
So I'm holding this up. So for people, if you want to go to YouTube and just see the cover of Steve's book, and I love the book. I mean, it's a little over my head, so it's taking me a while to get through it. Like I said, I don't have a whole lot of experience in finances, but I also really love the fact that some of the font on your book cover is the same color as the font on mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was serendipitous. I love the blue.
Uh-huh. The blue. Yeah. It's the same blue as the ninja.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Yeah. How about that?
So, when did you decide to write the book and why did you write it? And then I want to
Okay.
talk a little bit more about it.
Well, this is actually my third.
Oh.
And the first one was a little pamphlet that I wrote years and years and years ago. It was called Millionaire's Secret Investment Strategy. And that was just self-published that I kind of handed it out to my clients so that they'd know what I was thinking.
Mhm.
I guess around 2000, I wrote one called um, The Brainwashing of the American Investor, the book
Ooh.
that Wall Street does not want you to read. Ta-da, really.
Yeah,
And
I
that
think I
was,
saw that. Is it still on Amazon?
it still is, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that
It's,
one. I thought that was really interesting, an
and then
interesting topic.
finally, and this one, I wrote this because after I started my Facebook group, my first Facebook group was called Closed End Funds for Retirement Income and Equity Trading.
Mm,
And the people who started up with me in that group said, you got to write another book. It's not like your old book. It's different. There's different rules, there's different requirements, different cutoff points, different targets. You
mhm.
got to write it. And I said, well, you guys want a book right? Why don't one of you write it and I'll edit it? Well, that fell flat in space. So I said, okay, all right, let's get a bunch of us together. We'll set up an outline for this book that you want to have, and then I'll take that outline and I'll find a ghostwriter and we'll write this book. So that's how it happened.
Mhm,
And we started it in 2022,
mhm,
and then I started and I hired a ghostwriter and we I don't know we it was published last October, so it's almost
mhm,
at its anniversary of its publication right now,
mhm.
and it's already sold almost 4,000 copies.
Yeah, well,
So
congratulations.
which
That's
is
awesome.
kind of unusual. So, but yeah, we collaborated on it. I
Mhm,
even we even formed a set kind of partnership to
mhm,
fund it. Not necessarily not the same guys that helped me. I say guys, but there were
mhm.
some women
Right.
involved as well. The team
Mhm,
that wrote the outline, we added to that team another 20, 10 or 20
mhm,
people. And we had finally a group of almost 30 people who
mhm.
funded the book.
Mhm. Well, like you
And
said, 4,000 copies, that really is an awful lot. And yes, that is kind of unusual. However, I think that, and this is just my opinion, so I'd love to hear yours, is that, people are very much interested in finances right now. There's a lot of financial stress and pressure, and it seems like the economy we're not really sure where it's at.
we, there's always a good way to figure out where the economy's at and where it might be going. If the stock market is at or near an all-time high,
Hmm.
as it is, and as it has been most of not most of this year, but for since March of this
Hmm.
year, it's the market is really the best indicator of people's thoughts about the
Mm,
economy. So as much as some politicians will say that the
mhm,
economy is awful and the country is in the down going down the tubes, the
mhm,
majority of people out there are saying, "Hey, baby, this is a great economy. I'm going to keep throwing my money at the stock market and make it go higher and higher."
mhm,
And they don't do that when they think the economy is going to tank.
mhm,
So it's very, very clear from the stock market where in the general feeling is about the economy. And that's about the world economy
mm,
because every company of any size at all is now a global entity. There are very
mhm,
few just US companies in the that are in the stock market,
mhm.
you know. If somewhere on the supply chain or somewhere in who their client base is, they're global.
Mhm,
So doing things that affect, well, I don't want to get into politics, but like throwing up tariffs is
mhm,
never in any country's best interest
mhm,
because it just raises prices. And that goes
mhm,
to the people who have to buy the
mhm,
people and other companies that buy the services.
mhm,
Having a free economy is much better,
mhm.
but that's a different topic. And I didn't write about that at all.
Well, not yet, anyhow. Which brings me to another question. Do you have another book in the making or in the plans?
The conclusion that I want people to make when they invest is that they have to focus more on the income generated by this portfolio that has built on quality and diversification and income production and profit taking, but they have to learn to focus on the income it produces instead of the market value. The only entities that benefit from a totally rising market value in your portfolio,
Mhm,
income wise, are the advisors that you're paying to manage your money.
mhm,
They get paid based on amount under management.
mhm,
Okay. So if the market value goes up, they make more money. As a percentage, you make less
mhm,
because you're not taking the profits to reinvest. So if I could get that message out somehow,
mhm,
you know, but I'm not going to do it on my own. I'd have to
mhm.
be asked to do that. I'm too old to do another book. My wife would kill me. She would. She'd just pull my hair out with what little's left. She'd pull right out. It would be all over for me. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, and you have a lot more life left in you and a lot more traveling to do because you guys have been going everywhere.
We have. We
Mhm,
pretty much we have one more continent, and we've decided after this last trip we were just in Newfoundland,
mm,
and we there were so many people on this trip that had been to Antarctica,
mm,
which we have been. Why? We've seen penguins. You know, you've never seen that many though, right?
mhm, mhm,
So one more continent, and then we'll do something else. We're still young enough to do this stuff.
mhm. Yeah, well, maybe you'll do a bike ride across the continent, huh?
I don't know about that. I did 2.5 miles today. That's well half my normal, but that's still, and it's 86 degrees here today in the Charleston area. I mean, crazy. It's
Mhm.
almost October.
And what's the weather like then? It's
In here, usually,
yeah.
it's not in the 80s
Uh-huh.
in October or late September. It's, not in the mid 80s anyway.
Mhm.
It's usually in the 70s. It might get up to the 80s, but it's still golf weather.
Mm.
And we we're only 2 miles, 3 miles from the ocean, so we don't get a lot of 90 plus days,
Mm.
but we get our share. And but
Mhm.
the thing that's a lot of people complain about here is the humidity more than anything else. It's always humid.
Mhm. Actually, that sounds kind of pleasant. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania where, the humidity just, you're choking on it. And the winters were so long and so cold and so miserable. And the summers were really short and really hot and so humid and kind of miserable. And when I moved out here to Colorado, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, this is just heavenly."
Okay, so how far west in Pennsylvania were you?
Um, I was Beaver County is the county. And it's a small steel town, about 25 miles north, I think, of Pittsburgh,
Oh, okay, so
north.
you're way west.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
went to school in Gettysburg in the middle.
That's right. I did see that on your profile. So yeah.
Yeah,
Well, what were you
and
doing? So you weren't from Pennsylvania, though, were you?
no, I was from North Jersey.
Okay, so that's how you ended up in.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
that's
I ended up
close.
there.
Hmm.
And where in Colorado are you now?
Denver.
In Denver. Okay.
Hmm.
We used to have a place on Steamboat on the mountain at Steamboat Springs.
Steamboat was my very most favorite place to ski in Colorado. I stopped skiing when I was about 50 or 52, and I knew I probably would. You can't do everything forever. The slopes were getting like really crowded. It was really expensive. But my dad would come out every single year and ski with my husband and I. And so we skied, he loved Steamboat too, but Copper Mountain was a lot
Uh-huh.
closer. So we would just, ski there, and I mean, some great times, the best skiing on the planet. I mean, I learned how to ski in the Alleghenies, and when I got out here to Colorado, it was like, "Oh, I'm never
I
going
had about the
back."
same experience. I learned in the East how to
Yeah,
ski. Yeah, you learned how to ski on ice, so
absolutely.
it made you good. The
Yep.
trouble was when you got in powder and you didn't you had to keep them flat. It was a little difficult. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was great.
My youngest sister calls it bulletproof ice, and she's or was a really good skier. She hasn't skied for a while, but she was actually on the Penn State ski team when she was in
Oh,
college. And then, of course, when she would come out with my dad to go skiing, if it was a powder day, my husband and I were dancing around and high-fiving each other, and they were looking at each other going, "Oh my god, how do you deal with this stuff?"
it is different.
It
It
is
is different.
very different, yeah, but there's nothing like a good powder day. It feels like you're just floating. Well, the steamboat,
Yeah, yeah, it's perfect.
champagne powder. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
love that. Okay, so now, Steve, when did you decide that you were going to start your own coaching services so you can bring this information and work with people one-on-one?
Well, when we when my ghostwriter and I were developing the book, she pointed out to me that most nonfiction books, particularly in finance, are written to be kind of a funnel into some kind of services that you'd provide. And I really had no interest in actually, I had sold the business, you know,
Mhm.
but I really had no interest in retiring. I mean, I still had to do my own, and
Sure.
I knew I had this message, and so while we were working on the message, we developed what sort of at the back end of the book, you'll see the offerings and how we've put it together as some, what I do coaching for and Q&A sessions and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. In fact, there is a Q&A session at the end of the book
Mm-hmm.
with the group, you know.
Let me just put it up again for those people on
Okay, thanks.
YouTube so you can see this. Okay.
So, so then it just became, yeah, let's get this thing done and get it out there, and we got it, and it was an all-female development team. My
Of course.
ghostwriter, my proofreader,
Mm-hmm.
and the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
The uh, the first guy that got involved in this myself was the guy who did the audiobook, and
Ah,
he's really good. He's
so he
really
narrated it for you.
Yeah, he narrated it. Yeah.
That is hard work.
Yeah,
It is.
he was so good at it too. I mean, he did a chapter, pretty much he just sped through it. He had read
Mm-hmm.
it a couple of times first, and he got pretty enthusiastic, and
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, he's a good guy. So that's how the book developed, and we just kept answering questions. We had this outline that was created by people who needed to know this stuff. This
Mm-hmm.
is what they wanted from the book, and then we had Q&A sessions, and these are the questions they had, and these are
Mm-hmm.
ones who were already getting experience with it.
Mm-hmm.
And Carol had all kinds of questions because she was, in the right age group at the right experience level that she was doing this herself. So this was like a private tutorial for her, and
Mm-hmm.
she asked all the right questions. So we think, you know, that a person who reads it now, who's in that particular time of their lives, it's really going to be right on for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good team effort.
So is it ever too late to start investing or to, plan for
Well,
your
Well, I guess
retirement?
and unfortunately for a lot of people, it may be,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are people who don't get to 401k. They don't have an IRA. They don't inherit anything. They've just been, and they didn't get in the right jobs that had a pension plan or any type
Mm-hmm.
of benefit plan. Yeah, that's scary for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not, they're going to have to depend on government, Social Security and whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, anybody who's got an education, who's got a job, who's done their work, you know, to get moving in let's say from the teenage years to to our age. Not
Mm-hmm.
I'm not putting you in my age, believe me. But
We're
when they
about we're
get, but
pretty
they get
close.
into their 40s or 50s, most people today have stuff put away. They've done
Mm-hmm.
an IRA. If they haven't done a Roth IRA, they should be doing a Roth IRA
Mm-hmm.
because that is a tax-free forever benefit right now, and that's the only one
Mm-hmm.
that I can think of that is social. They tax us for Social
I
Security,
know.
and
I
that's
know.
that's
It's
like a
just
double dip, don't you think? Because
yes, I
we
do.
all consider it a tax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm going to segue just a little bit because I found this really intriguing. How is managing a portfolio like running a department store?
Oh, that's a great analogy, really, if you think about it. And it's the same thing you think about um, with the markets or with market value.
Mm-hmm.
If you were running a business, if you were running a Walmart, or if you were running a department store of any kind, even a pharmacy,
Mm.
um, would you be happy or sad that the value of your inventory was going higher and higher and higher?
I'd be pretty happy about that.
You would. That would mean
What?
you haven't sold anything.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the cash. Okay, I misunderstood.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
go
didn't
ahead.
mean the value of your business. I didn't mean if I said your
Oh,
bottom line profit was going up, then you'd smile. But your
yes.
bottom line profit can't go up unless somebody comes in and buys something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what capitalism is.
Mm-hmm.
So people who advise young people to put it away, set it and forget it. I'll keep getting my 1.5% fee forever. You'll be happy. I'll be happy because the market will grow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that doesn't always work out. Like if you happen to had to retire in 2008 or in 2000 or in
Mm-hmm.
1987 or any of the other crashes that we've had. So if you're think of your portfolio as a store, as a department store, and all of these stocks, or in my case, closed-end funds, these portfolios of stocks and portfolios of bonds, mortgages, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
securities are merchandise on your shelf, just like they're a
Mm-hmm.
pair of jeans, some shoes, a skateboard, a surfboard, all these different things. You've got a price on them that you'll sell it at a profit. Somebody comes in the store, you say, "Thank you very much, ma'am. Here it is. It's yours. I've made my little profit. I put it in my pocket, and now I'll go find something else to put on my shelf." That's exactly how you have to approach stocks. You don't fall in love with the merchandise you have. You may buy some for yourself, but you don't fall in love with it. You sell it when somebody gives you your price. And your price may vary. Let's say we do go into recession. We might have to lower our prices a little bit so that our profit margin might not be as big, but it's still a profit. And that's
Mhm.
better than nothing, you
Mhm.
know? If it's euphoric and everybody in the town just somehow they're what's that? You're next to a fracking place and they just got
Mhm.
a contract and they're all rich, you raise your prices a little bit, right? And you still take your profit, you still take your profits.
Mhm.
That's the way you have to approach investing.
Mhm.
All this stuff is merchandise. You're buying it at a price you think you can sell it for a profit.
Mhm.
In my case, you're only buying things that are also good employees for your business because they're earning you money. Well, if they just sit there, if you buy a closed-end fund, it can sit there forever as long as it's paying me 8 or 9%. I don't
Mhm.
care,
Mhm.
you know. So if you have all that merchandise is also paying you money, and it has the second stream potential of being sold at a profit, that's nirvana. That's what an investor should look for. And
Mhm.
that's what the investor will learn how to get if he, when he gets done with studying this approach to investing. It's income focused. There are two streams of income. The distributions from the securities themselves, every one of them participates,
Mhm.
and the income that comes from profit taking,
Mhm.
which this year we've had a very good year
Mhm.
and profit taking has been very good. It's a second stream. Like you think when you get your statement from your broker, I know Fidelity and Schwab and most of the ones, they'll have this projection of your next 12 months income, and most of it will be very, very puny.
Mhm.
But in the case of a CEF portfolio, closed-end fund portfolio, it's going to be like a 10 right now. These days, it's going to be between 8 and 10%, maybe more.
Wow.
So this is going to be the projection. So what my goal is after I divide that by 12 and I see what my monthly income is anticipated to be, my goal is to make an additional 5 or 6 months of income through profit taking.
Mhm.
So that's my objective. And then this year, in this, what some people think or want to think of as a not so great economy or
Mhm.
a not so great market, even though it is a very good market, um, I think I'm almost at the 6 month mark already,
Wow.
as far as 6 extra months of income.
Mhm. Well, I love the analogy of the department store.
Yeah, I've liked that one. It's worked. I even used it. I used that in my brainwashing book, which I bought before I had totally made the conversion. I
Mhm.
was into closed-end funds for the income side of the
Mhm.
allocation. Everybody should have income purpose securities in their portfolio as
Mhm.
well as equity or growth purpose.
Mhm.
And I was already using the closed-end funds for the income purpose, but when I wrote that book, I was still in the stock market because
Mhm.
until 2008, the stock market didn't have periods where you'd go up for oh, 2008 to 2020. I mean, it was 12 years of up.
Wow.
So, I said before it had to be down 20% for me to buy it.
Mhm.
Well, there was nothing in the quality level that I wanted that was down 20%. So I wasn't going to sit there on cash. So
Mhm.
that's when went to closed end funds and I didn't have any problem because I
Mhm.
didn't have to worry about that down 20% because I was buying portfolios of over 200 stocks on average and I could, you know, do it in a different way.
Mhm.
So,
So, when you work with people now, I mean, tell us, like your ideal client, how you work with them, how you help them, just a little bit more about your coaching services.
well, they typically people read the book and they start thinking about um, the income that they're not getting, and the fact
Mhm.
that unless they have a large seven figures,
Mhm.
it's not gonna, if they have to take out 4% a year,
Mhm.
25 years is all they've got. And if they have one emergency or one kid that needs help, or
Mhm.
you name it, any type of emergency comes right out of principal, because
Mhm.
there's no income. You ask anybody, any of your listeners, just take a look at your portfolio and see how much actual income. Don't look at returns. Don't look at
Mhm.
market values. Dollars in income that you could spend if you wanted it. And it would be an anemic number. It's going to be less than
Mhm.
2%, less than 3%.
Mhm.
And,
I want
and
to you illustrated that so beautifully at the very beginning of the book with that other retired couple that you met on a trip. And I don't want to, give away the store because I want the listeners to buy the book and read the book so they could hear the story. But when I was reading that story, and I mean, my heart kind of like I had to clutch my chest or I was clutching my pearls when I found out, how that couple, if they really were a true couple or fictitious, I don't know, it doesn't matter, but what they did so they could pay for this very lovely trip that they took where they met you and your
yeah,
wife.
well, the names were changed, but it was
Oh, I
based
knew
on
that. I figured that. Yeah.
a real couple. My wife's description of them was correct,
Hmm.
you know.
Well,
So,
your description or of your wife as you were having this conversation with the couple was actually quite colorful and very interesting. How her one eyebrow just kept going up a little higher and higher and higher and higher until it almost disappeared into her hairline. And that's when you figured it was time to like stop the conversation and just have fun.
yeah, yeah. So, so where were we? We were okay. So,
Yes.
so anybody who recognizes this need, um, that'll be the first type I get. They've
Mm-hmm.
got a portfolio, but they don't know how to trans, migrate from a no income environment to a high income environment.
Mm-hmm.
And their financial guy either poo-poos the closed end funds or says, no, we don't do that, or that's not the way to go, or these things use leverage. They'll come up with any excuse in the world not to do that because they know these things are designed to grow income, not market value, and they're going to suffer, but they really don't suffer because they'll have nothing but satisfied clients.
Mm-hmm.
I never lost any clients.
Mm-hmm.
If they died, the kids would take over and I'd lose them,
Mm-hmm.
but that was about the only way I lost a client. So they, once they're ready and they feel, yeah, I have to do something about this, they're the people that call me. And some of them say, oh, I really want to do this myself. They're the people who call me and I instruct them. So what I do is I look at what they've got
Mm-hmm.
and I'll find poor diversification in some, or if it's a model portfolio, it'll be wonderful diversification, but no income, no
Mm-hmm.
profit taking. Quality typically is pretty good. Most people select pretty good securities on their
Mm-hmm.
own. They make the other kinds of mistakes. So that's the first thing we go over. What
Mm-hmm.
you got? Is there any emergency? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's one guy who I have a meeting with next week, and I said, before we meet, you know, in what you sent me, you've got two or three positions that are huge, huge portions of your portfolio, and the stock market's at an all-time high. Don't wait for the meeting. Start pruning some of those, take some of those profits because, who knows what's going to happen
Right.
tomorrow.
Right.
That type of thing. So, yeah, that's pretty much the biggest mistake. So we look for those
Mm-hmm.
mistakes and how critical anything has to be done. If that's nothing, then we can just plan of
Mm-hmm.
how we're going to get from A to B. And are we working with taxable or tax deferred accounts? And do we
Mm-hmm.
have one of those Roths that we can, jack up and make it a real income producer tax free? Or is it
Mm-hmm.
such a huge portfolio that we can put tax-free municipal bonds into the taxable account, if they're really a
Mm,
high earner and so on. And, just so much stuff to think about.
mhm,
Um, so that's that. And then they'll have questions.
mhm,
And they may have questions about me. They may have questions about the process,
mhm,
stuff like they may have questions about taxes, which I'm really not qualified to talk about, other than to say that if you
mhm,
have to pay 25% of every dollar in taxes, you're still 75 cents ahead.
mm.
So more income is always better than less income, no matter what tax bracket you're in, you know? Do you,
So
you're, go ahead.
what? Good. No,
So,
go ahead.
so, so that's it. So, see, looking at the portfolios, the Q&A, what you need to
Mhm,
know to go forward, and then plotting the course. And the
mhm,
plotting of the course may take one or two sessions. There are people who feel that they want to re, and there's very few actually. And I doubt anyone that's retained me for a whole year,
mhm,
to do this. Usually, I have one guy who hasn't called me in 3 months, but I'm still on retainer,
mm.
and I check with him. You sure, Dave? You sure you don't want to need them? You don't need a meeting? He said, no, no, I'm doing good. Okay. So, but so that's the type of thing that I do with them now. And then it's just a matter of talk. And then once they're there, I have a I have a product. I I have the selection universes that I refer to in the book.
Mhm.
I can, some of them can subscribe to a year's supply of those or buy
Nice.
in, or in the beginning. And the smart thing to do, and what most people do, is they buy a set of them
Mhm,
so they can get started without scratching their head and going to CEF Connect and spending the day there trying to figure it out.
mhm.
They can use these, and then as they become out of date, they can create their own from that basic format that I give them. That's what most people
Well, all I have
do.
to say, I want to go back to the story at the very beginning of the book because it really, your passion for what you do and for helping people is very clear in that first chapter and in the beginning of the book. So I really recommend the listeners, get the book, you know, enjoy the first chapter because it is very entertaining. But yeah, I mean, there's so much valuable information in there that it gave me a little bit of hope because I know there are a lot of people who are kind of like wandering around not knowing what to do with their finances. And to me, that's really sad and a little scary.
Well, it can be. And there's no reason why you're, many people have advisors if they're, up there in that high six and seven figure category, they
Hmm.
have somebody looking after their stuff for them, particularly if they're still working.
Hmm.
And there's no reason that you can't discuss this with the person. And I recently wrote an article and I'm saying, you know, uh, how to vet your advisor and tell them, look, this is what I want. I mean, I know um, I'm paying you 1.5% a year or so. I want every year, I want at least that percent in net profits from this
Hmm.
account. I want you to
Hmm.
be paying attention and taking profits so that I have more than what I'm paying you in profits.
Hmm.
And the other thing, when I look at my projected income for the year, and since at retirement, you're going to tell me that we got to take out 4% a year to take care of your expenses. I want to see that my portfolio is earning more than 4%
Hmm.
every year.
Hmm.
And that's what I want from you. And if you can't do it, I'll take it somewhere else. But they
Hmm.
can do that.
Hmm.
They can even do it still in the stock market. There are more than enough good common stocks that pay more than 4% that they can construct a portfolio
Hmm.
that produces 4% without using my method.
Hmm.
They can do it.
So, Steve, where can people find you? How could they get a hold of you? Just give us some of that information.
Okay. My website is theincomecoach.net,
Hmm.
and all my contact information is there, and it's also in the book.
Hmm.
Um, book is on Amazon and any brick and mortar store and the ebook stores and at audiobooks and Amazon, I think is the only place you can buy the audiobook,
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know.
Well,
So
congratulations on all your success. I mean, that's very exciting.
thank you.
And thank you
Thank you.
so much for being on the show too. I really enjoyed our conversation. And as soon as I finish reading this book, I'm going to have my husband read it. And then, yeah,
Okay.
it's
Well,
got some
maybe I'll
great
hear from you
information.
sometime.
You might. You might. So, do you have any final little pearls of wisdom or anything you want to share with the
Yeah, I
listeners before we wrap up?
I guess I think it's just to reiterate what I just said, just a moment ago. Really take a look
Mhm,
at your portfolio and, you know, yeah, there should all the money shouldn't be in any one thing. You should have good diversification. You should have
mhm,
at least 20 different securities and less than 5% in each of them. But look at the income it's producing.
mhm,
That's that's what's going to pay the bills down the road.
mhm.
And start thinking about how you can develop an income either through your advisor or on your own. And from the information that's in, retirement money secrets, you'll be able to do that
Mhm.
easily.
One less. There you go. Okay. And Steve, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
I enjoyed talking to you very much. It was fun.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. Oh, do share this episode with everyone you know. There is so much wonderful information, not only in the conversation, but if you get Steve's book, and I hope you do, because it's really, I mean, it's a wealth of information. Oh, that was a little play on words, huh? Wealth of information. And we can all use a little bit more wealth in our retirement and in our everyday lives. So that is the way of the Fema Ninja.